In answering the question, I think that a good place to start is Hebrews 1, verse 1, where Paul writes, or we think is Paul, some of us don't know, but saying, perhaps Paul, he says that God in various times and various ways spoke to us through the prophets, has now spoken to us by his son,
Yes.
Jesus Christ. So I think firstly, there is a distinction between an Old Testament prophet and a New Testament prophet, and I think one of the main differences or distinctions is their filter. When I look at an Old Testament prophet, the law was their filter. In other words, the filter through which God spoke and the filter by which they heard and by which they spoke was the law. But now we see, and to avoid any confusion, when the writer says that God used to speak to us by the prophets, but now he speaks to us by his son, he's not by any means saying that God doesn't speak to us by prophets anymore. He's just saying that the New Testament prophet, the New Covenant prophet, has a new filter, and that new filter is the Son of God, is Jesus Christ. So I think that when we talk about the nature and character of a New Testament prophet, we're talking about this prophet is accountable to the new filter, which is
Yeah.
Jesus. The second thing that we're looking at is the prophet's accountability to apostolic doctrine, specifically the doctrine of the gospel of grace that God revealed to Paul. Because I think that because we have this new filter, which is Christ, the
Mhm.
gospel of grace that Jesus himself, Galatians 1, Paul said, I didn't learn this gospel from like a book or a person. Nobody taught this to me.
Mhm.
I got it by a revelation of Christ. So even when people today, and I know people mean well, but even when people today try to say, I think some people think we have some sort of theological crush on Paul. But the thing about Paul is that, it's not like, nobody's putting Paul above Jesus.
Right.
I'm trying to be nice, but I don't know where we get that from. The thing
Right.
about Paul's revelation is where he got it from. So Paul is not putting himself above Jesus. It's just that when we look at Jesus's ministry, Jesus operated as the Messiah, yes, but as a Jewish prophet under the old covenant, right? And so Jesus didn't preach the gospel that Paul preached, but Jesus taught the gospel that Paul preached to Paul. So there's no competition because everything Paul taught, he's saying, I got this directly from Jesus. So that's just a sidebar. But to say this last point, then come off the stage, is that I think first and foremost, the New Testament prophet's foundation has to be the New Testament. It needs to be the new covenant. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 3, we endeavor to be able ministers of the new covenant. That is everybody in the fivefold, from apostle to teacher. Everybody must be accountable to the new covenant, the gospel of grace.
No,
So,
that's excellent spiritual engineering.